I have two of her books right over there on that little table if y'all want to look at her garden books. The Garden View is the name of her company. And she works all over the Southeast and has been in business a long, long time and has great vision for gardens and is a really interesting person. And she has other books. Those are the only two that I have, but she has other books she's written also. So here's Tara. Oh, that's right.
I've never been in the round before. What's best for everybody? If I stray. Thank you all for asking me back. This is really a big deal, and just what a treat for all of us after the last year and the beginning of this year. This garden is quite a garden. How many years have you been in, Mary Lily?
37.
Okay, 37 years. And I get called with questions already in the email for me. She has a garden, but she has a life. She works, children, life is, and you're busy. You got to go to the grocery store. You got to do laundry. You got vacations. Well, she'd been gardening the whole time, very well indeed, and this is what I find out with most gardeners. You're so busy living your life. Well, my life was garden design. That was my profession from my early 20s. And I went off to Europe to study historic gardens for over 20 years. And I wasn't able to have children. So you see how I could leverage myself faster? And then the ladies who were serious gardeners with beautiful gardens that would be at the Southeastern Flower Show and stuff like that, I could reach out to them. We could have lunch because their children were grown and gone. And I couldn't have children. So you see how I leveraged myself. So don't think any of you don't know gardening, because this is what I always know when I'm asked a question, and Mary Lily is included. The answer is usually in it. It's usually in it. So one of the first things today, I don't know what you all noticed walking up to her house. The first thing about garden design everybody should know, and it's the most important thing, and after I say it, I can go home. Your garden begins inside your house. That's where your garden design begins, is inside looking out. And at Mary Lily's, coming from the street, one of the funnest things she has, one of the simplest things to maintain, and I'd like for y'all to come back in 2 years for a garden club here because the pruning is going to be a little bit different, but her circular drive off the front door, it's on perfect axis. That is a great example of starting your garden design from inside the house, looking out. Then it's round. It meets a function with its form because it's a parking court, and then they can come on in. And then you can walk through it, so it's a garden space. And eventually there'll be a couple of benches in there so you can sit out there even on a winter's day because it's got full sun. So I think Mary Lily, all the way around her house, she's a very good gardener. She's a very good garden designer. But she had a life to live while I'm investigating historic gardens, several hundred years old that are already successful. And so what's going to happen is she's going to have a flow of garden rooms. And what needs to happen here to leverage what she's already done, which is perfect, I'm not changing anything she's done, I'm adding to it. Oh, I need to back up. The deer fence. She's had a life-changing event with her deer fence. I think everybody here, you're in Watkinsville, so everybody has the deer issue, but having the deer fence now has allowed her to do some things she could never do before. So she did some correct garden design, but the deer were pruning it away, so it didn't exist. So she would be further along that road without, the deer issue. So the deer fence comes in, and there's some things we'll be doing. For instance, this is a beautiful zone right here, all on its own, just this zone right here. Well, from this zone, I really don't want to look over and see all of the pool. Maybe not even any of the pool. Put some more evergreen bushes in here, trying to match what's already here, and they come up to a certain height. And so this is a small area, and it's counterintuitive. This is what happens with garden design. So I come in, and I know what needs to happen. You all think, oh, well, this is crazy because this isn't a big enough spot. Well, in tight spots, oftentimes they live bigger if there's more plant material in it. In small areas, I'm going to repeat it, it's so important. In small areas, it is often advantageous to add more plants to it, and the space will get larger because it adds a layer of mystery to it. You can't see everything at once. It's like I've been to some really formal, beautiful, centuries-old French gardens in France. It was not a TV show or a book. I'm standing there. So you go to this French garden, you have a guide, very famous. Well, you're standing in one spot and you see the whole thing. Might as well go to the gift shop. Eat lunch, because they're going to have some good lunch at the French garden. So if they had put a little bit more into it, the Italians, they have more hedging, and then the French open it all up, but then you get more hedging when you get back into England and everything. So what I've done with Mary Lily's garden is we walk and talk the first few times for the design is we're adding more hedging materials before all her different garden rooms because they are stunning. She also has on purpose, so here's the formal lawn, but do you see the taller meadow back here? Well, that's because she has a taller meadow. She has everything. And it'll become more of a surprise when the hedges come up here. We also use old-fashioned plants. There are a lot of plants on the market. I don't know, the past 10 years, it seems, there are a lot of new cultivars, and they are heavily advertised. They're not very cheap. They're very expensive plants. And I'm an old-fashioned garden. I've always gravitated to the likes of Professor Sargent Camellia or Azalea George Tabor. because they are proven across a century at least in the South. And I know that they're going to take February. February is our month here. Yeah, you're shaking your head. February is the month that you have to watch out for here with your plants, aside from deer, because we will have cold weather, significantly cold weather. We can get up to 62 degrees and then that night be at 2 degrees. And that's why a George Tabor is going to do more for you than an Encore azalea. Because the Encore azalea was designed to be beautiful, bloom twice a year and do certain things, but George Tabor was noticed back in an era when the integrity and choices for propagating plants were different than we have now. So with everything that Mary Lily is doing in her new layers, I got her into my favorite wholesaler, which is here. I don't know if I should say it because
Yes, say it.
it's Aubrey's Arbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Don't use my name and go there because it is wholesale. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But when I go to Aubrey's Arbor, it's like walking into a Pike nursery circa 1980. It's just heaven because every plant in there is going to do well for you. So anyway, the plants matter. But then the plant diversity, I've had my garden on TV shows. It's been in magazines, books, newspapers, and all that kind of stuff. Started off with a lot of perennials and perennial borders, and then I let that segue into a lot of flowering shrubs and bulbs, and then the tough perennials like iris or dianthus bath pink or purple coneflower, just very simple. And now I've moved here. You all know me through, I did Hedgerow Farm, Lisa's garden. Well, I fell in love with it out here, and I found a house on Zillow in Morgan County. So I live in a 1900 house on 5 acres, and I was 25 moving into my house in Stone Mountain, 25, and I lived there 30 years. So I was 55 moving in my Morgan County house. So you know I'm planning my garden for my 80-year-old self. And that's a lot different than planning for your 30 and 40-year-old self. So I'm doing, and deer and armadillo. Yeah, okay. Never going to have a deer fence like Mary Lily has, not going there, can't afford it. So I'm going to have deer and hedges, and I'm going to have tea olives and some hollies and stuff like that. It's all going to be tough. And I'm going to get a shotgun for some of the armadillo. I can't believe I just said that. We're not being filmed, are we? This is but they make great fertilizer when you throw them off somewhere. So my garden, by the way, if we weren't doing this kind of venue, if I had a big screen and slideshow, we'd be talking about TerraTurf, the tall grass with clover and different things in it and the lower mowed pathways. We still need to do that maybe in a couple years. It's so incredible. Lisa's got it at Hedgerow, and Mary Lily's almost there. She's doing other things. She doesn't know she'll be having TerraTurf in a year. I learned it at TerraTurf. I didn't know what to call it. I learned it in Europe starting in the 80s. Centuries old gardens. They don't have monoculture lawns. They won't just have fescue or centipede or anything like that. They will have a mix of things, just wildflowers and herbs and, what the birds drop in. And they've always used that. And if you want to get from here to the buildings over there, which you do, you will then make a pathway. You'll mow it lower. So you can mow that once a week. And then, this is what I'm learning in Morgan County personally, then your yard man mows the rest of it taller. I have it mowed every 2.5 to 3 weeks, and his mower is at 5 3/4 inches. That's how tall it'll go. You know the zero turn things that cost $15,000 a piece? It's cheaper to hire the man. So he comes, and I love that I'm one of the clients that whatever's going on in his life or work, I can be put off. Does that make sense? Because I still have my clover. But when he comes every 2.5, 3 weeks, depending on rain or whatever blew up somewhere else on his schedule, well, there I have he mows down, maybe it's at 8 inches, 8.5 inches. He just mows it down to 5 3/4 inches again. And guess why this is so important? And this is huge, the TerraTurf. It's pollinator habitat. It is absolute pollinator habitat. And how many of you have already heard Doug Tallamy speak? Doug Tallamy? I'm seeing a few heads shake. Everybody here wants to hear Doug Tallamy speak on pollinators. And where you have in the grass area, the grassy areas, like the terra turf, well, then you will have the birds that then come for the insects that are coming to the flowers, and everything starts from there going up to where your predator birds are and the deer and everything. So this whole thing, and it feeds the soil, which is healthier for us, and you don't have to mow as much, and then you don't need fertilizer, you don't need to irrigate, and so there's nothing toxic for the groundwater or the soil. So there's all kinds of benefits to it, and I'll be quiet because that'll be another talk. But Mary Lily, I really wish in 2 years y'all could come back so that you could see the hedges that are coming up here. And then everybody has a quirk. Everybody here, I really wish I could know what everybody's gardening quirk is. And you probably don't know what it is, but I would know it. And Mary Lily still doesn't. She knows what I'm going to say, but she's like, I do not. Really? No. But she knows to trust me when I say, you've got too much stuff over here. What you need to do is keep buying. She's a picker. She's really good at picking good gardening items for the yard. I mean, too good. And they pop up at her like, oh, well, that was $4, or this magnificent thing that, you know, would probably be $1,200. I paid $125 for that around the corner at a yard sale. I told her, keep buying it, because she's one of those rare people that's a picker. And I said, we're going to put a gravel terrace between the two buildings over there. We're going to string some lights and some chandeliers from the oak trees and some dining tables under there, and then she can sell those goods because she needs to rescue them. That's why I look at it. She needs to rescue them from an unknowing public, and so when the knowing public, aka you all, come here, you're buying it. It's going to a new home to start a new life over again. So Mary Lily, she really did have a whole bunch of stuff out that was just too much, and it was too good to waste. So I told her, keep buying, and then you can sell it. In a garden, gardening is one of the most amazing things I know. Just physically, when you go out into your garden, just you and your bushes and your lawn and your trees, there's just this sense you get out of it that you're in flow, there's transcendence. Things come off of you of the day-to-day world, and really, how many of you here, and I'm looking at all ages, myself included now, because I've been gardening since childhood, and I'm grandma's age now. It's less than 15 minutes, I'm on my knees. What else? I mean, in the house, are you just so happy to go down on your knees to do, oh no, I'll do that later, or I'll save that for the whatever. But in the garden, there's something that happens. And how many of you have seen the TED Talk on trees and how they communicate? TED Talk, look it up, and how trees communicate. So these trees here, some of the PhDs and scientists across the country are going so far as to say that the trees are sentient, that they have feelings, because they've tested them scientifically for how they communicate, and they're communicating through their root system, through the soil, through the mycorrhizal fungi that are on them. And they're telling each other things like, oh, we've got an insect infestation, you need to start releasing this hormone in your foliage. Or, oh, we're really in drought, there's a spring over here, there seems to be a little bit more moisture over here. Or, oh, we've got cicadas coming. And so they are literally talking to each other, but it's not just your trees, it is the bushes and everything. And the electric current in the trees is the same electric current we have in our hearts and in our brains, the microbiome. And then this stuff, I talk about terra turf and pollinator habitat and trying to get as natural as you can in your garden. Our microbiome in the gut, your serotonin, and your dopamine, which makes up a lot of our mood on an hourly basis, it's not part of our DNA, it's part of the microbiome of bacteria and everything. So all the good things we need for health was put together out here for us, and we're liking that too. We're susceptible. I look at all of you all now and I think, oh yeah, we were all born susceptible to gardening, because we're getting out of it. Like, some people are really good with electricity. You know, they can just wire up anything, or some people are good with woodworking. We're good at this, so we're all kindred spirits out here. And Mary Lily, again, when she texts me or emails me, I love her sentences because she's on it. And she wants by the weekend to have whatever that topic is done. Done, I tell you. And she does. And I guess you all know Mary Lily better than me, but for her to even ask for help tells you how much she loves her garden. I know her well enough to know she's very competent in arenas of life that I have no competence whatsoever. And so for her to ask these questions, and then guess what else she does when she asks the questions? And I answer them. She does what I say. And because she trusts me. Garden design is not a voodoo practice. Everything I say, like gardens start from the inside looking out, this stuff has been done since before Christ. Thousands of years, the best gardens, the simplicity. So my garden now that I'm doing in Morgan County in my old house, I have a lot of hedges, tall hedges, short hedges, understory trees, canopy trees, terra turf, gravel terraces. I've got gravel terraces and a fire ring and trees for shade. So, and then when I have my furniture, what you do, I learned this in France on a garden tour decades ago. When you have field gathered furniture outside, and field gathered means I've gotten it at the store, junk shops, garage sales, the side of the road. All of my furniture, tables, chairs, whatever I have, is all the same color. So you see how it's unified? It's very calm. And here is how you need to choose your colors for your garden. This is very important. Again, I don't make any of this stuff up. It's been done for centuries, since before Christ. Every garden exterior needs a color trinity. You want a color trinity. And the world's classic color trinity that'll work the fastest for everybody is green, brown, and white. Green, brown, and white. And within me saying green, brown, and white, you get any shade of green you want, any shade of white, any shade of brown. So it's unique to you, period. And then you get a subsidiary color. So everything flows. Does that make sense? So now when you go to buy a new bench or something, and it is what it is, but you've got your color theme going, it doesn't matter what it is, because you're going to paint it the color you need for your garden, and it'll make it unique. And oh God, when I was younger and I'm saying all these things about putting your garden together, I've got an engineering degree and a horticulture degree, so I've made an equation out of it. Again, no voodoo. I don't like rules in the garden because I want to be me. I want to be original, and I'm going to do it like nobody else has ever done it before. Oh, and by the way, how much money do I have to spend on that? Very little. Oh, by the way, also on money in the garden, I've seen money ruin more gardens. And less money helps more gardens than you could imagine. It keeps you from getting in trouble is when funds are tight. So keep your garden simple, and the hedges, the terra turf, the understory trees, the canopy trees. Oh, and you want a potager. You know, you want herbs and tomatoes and stuff like that, and rosemary and lavender. You want all of that. So you want a potager in your garden. You want a pleasure walk. You want this. You want a place to sit. You want a place to read. I like choosing furniture for the garden that I could read mail in or read a book and put my head back a little bit. Comfort. And I want to be able to take a nap. If I want to fall asleep in that chair, I need to be able to fall asleep in that chair. So everything, there's every layer I'm doing in my garden has a reason there to leverage my life, because guess what my life includes? And I'm not there yet with this garden, but I had gotten to it in my 30-year garden before. Let's say I found out your daughter's getting married, and it was a little unexpected, and just because of COVID or something like that. I didn't mean anything else.
It's okay.
Well, I could say to you, let's have a shower in my garden. let's have a breakfast or a lunch and we can do a shower for her. My garden was ready to go. It was simple. It looked good. It would be good in background photography because it leverages your life. I want each of you to be able to do what Mary Lily did and say, oh, well, come have it at my house. And you know what happens also when you say that. You do a few little extra things. You do a few little extra things. And then when it gets to be too much, segue some of those things out and pass it on. Give it to a friend if you don't have enough stuff. I've got a handout I'm going to pass out for you all.
Tara, can I ask a question? Was this already here?
Yes, this was already here. She was. Okay. How many of you been to Israel and the garden? Okay, Israel, the garden tomb of Jesus. You know what I'm talking about. This is the garden at the garden tomb of Jesus right here. It had where the stone is. What,
The tomb.
the tomb. They have some tombs there not far from Golgotha around the corner. And it's a little bit more slope than this. It's stone. But they did the meandering paths overlooking the tomb because so many people come. And each group, you know, like the size of a Greyhound bus group, you'll sit on the stone benches, and everybody has views of the tomb. But there are bushes and trees, so your group feels private. So let's say that's your group, and there would be bushes, and y'all would be private overlooking the tomb, and y'all be private, and y'all be private. This is classic design right here that I think we're imprinted with from pre-birth. Am I making sense? Because she just, Mary Lily, she just put in her little pathways, and then she opened it up and bought too many chairs. And here they are, and all these nice spaces. And this would be so much nicer if she'd had the deer fence. There's so many nubbins here. But she did foot scale, like you would see classically. That they were doing those gardens. In fact, let me say one more thing about gardens in the time of Jesus. You know, he went to the Garden of Gethsemane before the crucifixion. And I was so excited to go to the Garden of Gethsemane. I was so excited. And when you get there, the Garden of Gethsemane is exactly what they tell you it is, but somehow my brain, you grow up in America with the Bible and Sunday school and everything, but you get to the Garden of Gethsemane, and it is an olive orchard. It's an olive orchard. And somehow our brains over here across an ocean thought it was some sort of, it had to be more than that. But you get there, and it is literally an olive orchard. Well, guess what an olive orchard is? Those trees live centuries, and guess what kind of ground cover they have? It's terra turf. The terra turf with the pollinator habitat for the olive trees, or any, I mean, it could be citrus trees, it doesn't matter, but for any trees, any plants, the terra turf, in addition to the pollinator habitat, it will increase crop yields by 80%. So if you're a businessman and I tell you stop using chemicals out here, put in the terra turf, and if you're growing corn or whatever, you don't have to use fertilizer, there's less watering, and your crop will increase by up to 80%. You're going to think a lot more of it. But I just thought that was fascinating, that where Jesus went to contemplate what he was doing for us was just plain old orchard. The power of a garden, again, where did Jesus go before the biggest event of Earth's history, but his own? It's just a big deal outside, and it's so big I don't have words for it. And I can't imagine a time coming I couldn't be out in my garden. I just can't imagine that. But I do know, because we all have older friends and things come, you know, and they'll be in a hospice bed in their living room looking out. It's just, I can't imagine that. Okay. Another thing about your garden and where you put everything, if you have the option to put some trees in, put it to deciduous trees to shade in summer and then fall off in winter. So you have all that nice sunshine hitting you in the winter time. and do it for scale so that you don't have a big oak tree that you're going to have to cut down on your timeline. There's just some real simple things that you can do that will cut your heating and air bill. And I'm just surprised that I don't see that done more. In fact, the house I bought, the previous owner made a few mistakes on planting, and some things have to be cut down, and I know downtown Buckhead's going to be mad at me. Like, what have you done? But I need better heating and cooling. I received a thank you note from a client recently for helping her in her garden, and she put a turn of phrase about a garden in the way that I approach it, and I say we approach it because otherwise y'all wouldn't be here, is it's community, not commodity. That gardens are community, not commodity. Put that in your brain and think about it. Just keep it there. It's a big deal. What it does for us and then allows us to do for others. It's just such a big deal. I went out of town last weekend and I had a bunch of figs were coming in, and so I brought a basket full of figs to my hostess, and when I was leaving, we hadn't done anything with them. She said, do you want to take these home with you? And I said, absolutely not. You know, they're yours. And she said, good, I'm going to make some fig jam. I can't imagine having taken them home, and then I brought some other things, but anyway. I feel like the garden talks to us. Well, y'all are here, so you already know that. But do you know that your garden talks to you? Yeah, yeah. I was working a job site in Athens, the neighborhood, and the new client was a block away from a past client who had moved. And I thought, I want to go see that past client house. She's been gone a year. I just want to see what's going on. And I just stopped my car. I just stopped my car, and they've lived there a year and done nothing, just absolutely nothing. And so, you know, some things needed pruning and all that, and I thought to myself, don't they see? There's not even that much work to do. Don't they see? The garden is telling them, I heard it. I want to have a relationship with you. Their garden was saying to them that bought this beautiful house and garden, I want to have a relationship with you. And then I'm laughing at myself. It's like, great, Tara. Now you know gardens talk. So I have started a book of, well, I've got a bunch of them. And I brought this to encourage you all for the Commonplace book. Thomas Jefferson did them. They've been done since well before the Renaissance. But I've started in one of them, phrases I know the garden has said. And each one of you here, you're laughing. Oh, I see some of you snickering. Each one of you has phrases your garden has said that you've heard. You have. I want to see all of y'all's lists. Okay. And then some of you, I know I'm going to want to see your garden. But one thing, I don't keep a journal. I don't keep a diary. That's beyond me. I'm boring. But the garden and everything that makes up a garden is very exciting. So, for instance, in the garden, you can figure out things that are going on in your life. You know those moments of epiphany? Like, there's just something going on over here, and you don't really know what it is, and you're not thinking about it. You're in the garden, and 2 hours later, you're like, oh, that's it. Well, the left brain, right brain, and how they work, and then the electricity that's going on in the garden and in us, poof, there you go. You think you had an epiphany, when in fact, we were engineered this way to have all of this work to our good. It's just part of the process. Questions we ask ourselves that we don't ask ourselves, they're inherent. The 3 Manchu questions: what did I do for others today? What did I do for my business today? What did I do for myself today? You know, those are the kinds to dwell on, questions to dwell upon, instead of, I guess, personalities in there. And that's what gardens do for us, is they take us away. But does anybody else here do a Commonplace book? They've been called Commonplace books since, I mean, you can Google it. It's all over the place for centuries. And they thought Thomas Jefferson's daughters had done one of the journals they found, and they found out, no, it was Thomas Jefferson himself. And so, I mean, I'll start anywhere in here. I could put whatever. I put some art in it. I write whatever. Quotes from John Adams, the Bible, DAR, garden clubs. It's just, I put it all in here, and then it helps me see further, and I make my own quotes from it, from other great writers, because the swirling around that I get from my garden just comes out in these. So I've written 5 books that are on Amazon, but these are my most precious books. If there's a fire in my house, the silver will stay put and the books come out on it. But I have a handout for you all, and there's some stuff on here. Y'all are reading a lot of new terminology now for gardens. Regenerative, eco, permaculture, and the word sustainable, it's really old-fashioned now, because sustainable can mean using fertilizer and chemicals, whereas regenerative is how we've farmed all along in America or in Europe. And they're finding out that the small farms, yeah, they're so much better for the soil, but they're also better for community. The community that evolves around people who are small farm holders, because they're mixing the cows and the pigs and the crops and the trees and other things with it. And so they're selling directly to restaurants and homeowners via clubs and groups, and then that land has not become toxic with fertilizers or chemicals that do drift, or you don't have GMO seeds that then infect your garden that you can't change once the pollination starts happening. So the whole regenerative word, I'm just gravitate now online to whenever I see regenerative versus sustainable, and food, and then health. They're starting to put together regenerative with us and our bodies and what we need, and the electricity of our bodies and mental state. And I can't imagine not being able to go in the garden again. Any questions? Is there anything I need to cover about your garden that stood out? Oh, axis. This stands out to me. Mary Lily has several areas that were, you come through an entryway like on the side of the house, and so here's this entryway, but then we go out and you go across the grass and there's another entryway into the woodland, but she was not leveraging that. She was not. And here is when you have a view through to a view like that, so there's an entry with a pair of things on the right at the house, sweep of grass, pair of things leading into the woodland, that's an enfilade, a view through to a view. And they're a very easy focal point. It's the drama that you put to it, and I like focal points that are pots so wonderful they don't need to be planted. You know, she's got some good pots here, but if they're not planted, that's okay. I like pots that are on plinths. There's a good phrase you need to remember when you leave. This will probably be what you remember. I'm going to say it. In your garden, remember, dinky is stinky. Dinky is stinky. And that goes along with keep it simple, sweetie. Sometimes, well, less is more, but sometimes more is less. Does that make sense? Have you run into that? Oh, and then there's such a thing as faux geometry. Faux geometry. And that happens when the house is wonky to this or that and the other. You really don't know it, but then you're coming to line things up and you're doing proper geometry and it's not working. Because unbeknownst to you, the house and the driveway were not at right angles. So what you're doing now has to be wonky a little bit, so you don't have perfect geometry, but it looks like perfect geometry. So I call it faux geometry. Does that make sense? I got to tell you all these things so you don't think you're weird. It's just gardening. And plants are hard to find now. And beware the ones that are new and on the cover of Southern Living magazine or something. You know, the old ones will get you through. Questions?
Well, let me say, all this grass here is centipede, and I particularly planted that because of the pool. Because centipede, you do not fertilize, you don't need much water, it doesn't grow very tall. It's not quite as green as some of the other grasses, but it's really easy to take care of if you fertilize it, something like mill organite, a organic fertilizer. But now mill organite may not be what you want to use because of how it's processed and
Tell them why. Tell them. Go ahead.
well, it's because mill organite is human waste. It's made in Milwaukee. That's why I'm mill organite. But that comes from all of us, and it's all the drugs we take and all that. So that could be passed on to the pollinators and the birds and everything. I've got 4 in the front over there and 3 over here. Those big giant magnolias. The leaves are this big. Umber magnolia, I think they call that. People always ask me about that. And then I have 2 mullein plants over there. Those are weeds, but in the southwest, they cultivate that in gardens. And it's those big furry leaf things that grow up. One of them's grown up that tall, and it has little yellow things on the top. And my neighbors drive by and they see that and they go, "What are those big things in your garden?" I'm like, "Well, it's actually a weed." And all that greenery that's right over there in that's all weeds too, but in August it will have yellow blooms on the top. It's just beautiful. So in the summer it keeps me shielded from the neighbors, then I enjoy that, then it dies completely back to the ground. I planted clover all back here 2 years ago. It didn't work. This year it all came up over there. I've cut it. It's been cut 3 times. It still has blooms on it. I only cut my yard every 2 weeks. And so that's my terra turf I'm working on over there, I guess. We just put in the herb garden right here, so it's near the kitchen. 34 George Taba azaleas is what Tara
For hedging.
right here, and then there's some over there, and there's some back here. 5 tea olives on the front to shield the fence, and then a few other little things here and there. So walk around and look at everything, ask me some questions. I may know the answer, I may not. Any questions for Tara?
Tara, let me just say this. I don't know if you've met Shauna McGrath. She lives in Morgan County.
Well,
Walton County. Oh, Walton. Who lives in Morgan County?
well, I came from there. She lives
The
at
Finleys, do they live in Morgan County?
Thomas Vale is my first.
Right next door.
But, so, membership is open.
I like that.
All right. We'd love to have you.
You got me.
All right.
Thank
good
you
deal.
all. Thank you all. You didn't know, but thank you.
We'd love to have you anytime. And you don't have to sing for your lunch next time.
I tear up a lot more the older I get.
Well, thank you very much for coming today, Tara. We will make a donation to a charity in your honor, and you can tell us about who that is
Okay.
now or later, whenever you
Thank you.
prefer to do so. So that is all we have for our program today, and it's been outstanding. Again, thanks to Ray and Mary Lely for hosting us. It's a beautiful garden. The weather turned out spectacular. Just a great day all around. So it was a good meeting. So we'll see you in September. There's a song about that, isn't it? And don't forget Athens Fence Company
The digger
business
deer
cards.
fence.
Okay. Have a good day. Have a good week. Go dig in the dirt.